Hello, everybody, and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. I'm your host, Sam Biccarino, and today is your weekly review pod of the games that happened this weekend. It was game week 15, and we've got a fantastic panel to go through them. First up, we have someone that, despite the fact she wasn't at the Arsenal game this weekend, is still repping the colours. It's Izzy Duddy.
I couldn't not, could I, Sam? I had to choose between my one of maybe 5, 6 at this point. But yeah, no, very happy with the results. So I thought I'd go with something that's probably quite retro now, a couple seasons ago.
It is, yeah. I can tell from when it is, from the jagged things on the collar. But yeah, it's not, back when Arsenal, that might have been a trophy winning season. I can't quite remember them. Alongside myself and Izzy, we have one of the other regulars at least. No Jacob today, but we do have Tom Maher. Tom, how are we doing?
Yeah, all good. You have to settle for the second best Know Your Stat player for today, I'm afraid.
Well, you're the best Know Your Stat player on the pod, so you can at least take that.
I'm not 100% sure on that one, I got to say, but thank you.
Talking to someone that's very good at Know Your Stat, not necessarily in volume, but definitely in sort of quality over quantity. Although she is becoming a bit of a regular on the pod, it's Laura Howard back again.
Yeah, good to be back. I'm not sure. I'm rapidly decreasing in my Know Your Stat ability, so that might not be anywhere near me for very long. But now I'm going to put the pressure on Tom today.
I think you're still at a 50% win rate at the moment. The Know Your Stat episode will be out tomorrow. It's going to be me, Laura, and Izzy playing with Tom as host this time. I'm going to do one of my rare playing days. Hopefully I can keep up some kind of win rate, because I think I'm on 50%, but it's literally 1 from 2, so small sample size. Hopefully it won't be 1 from 10 in a few pods time. This weekend we had 6 games in the WSL, quite a lot of goals and quite a lot of really interesting games. There were definitely some going into it that I thought were going to be very important, both at the top and at the bottom of the table, and that they were. So a little, before we get into each one, because we will go through each one individually as we always do, a little review of the games that happened this weekend. Leicester were outfoxed as Man United were efficient in their win on Saturday. Arsenal were living it up at the Emirates, ending City's winning streak in the process. Fisk and reward for Liverpool as they swept Villa aside. Brighton were dealt a hammer blow late on, losing despite being 2-0 up against West Ham with 10 minutes to go. Everton won their first game without Brian Sorensen, with LCL unable to pass the Great Wall of Brosnan. And Madonna was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in the final game of the weekend. Hopefully Spurs won't get too hung up on the result, because the visitors were Material Girls in a mercurial world. I'm making it work. Walsh firing Chelsea to a win in a big game in the race for Champions League places. But we're going to start today's pod with Saturday's game, the one at the King Power, Leicester 0, Manchester United 2, and Rachel Williams facing her old side for the first time since leaving, which makes it sound like it was a lot more than just a few weeks ago. Across from Julia Zigossiomi was missed by everyone in the first half to give Red Devils the lead as it went past Clark to go in. Elizabeth Turland is once again scoring off the bench. Some good footwork in the box before slotting home made it 2-0 late on, and meant Leicester lost for the third game running, the joint longest losing streak in the WSL at the moment. And you might have seen on social media that Courtney Brosnan was in our team of the week, but Liv Clark was not far behind. She made quite a few important saves in this game. I think if it was a closer game, she may well have got that place over Brosnan. This was a game that had a little bit of an awkward moment at 1-0. Tom, I know none of us were actually at the game, but we all caught up with it after. And I think Leicester, for me, probably should have had a penalty when Shannon O'Brien was sort of collided into, I guess, by Anna Sandberg. It didn't look to me like there was a lot of attempt to get the ball. And for me, it was probably a penalty, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think this was a really interesting one, because I thought there wasn't enough in it for me to be a penalty at the time. I think that what would frustrate me from a Leicester perspective is that for Man United's second goal, then Ziggy basically does the exact same thing to Sam Tierney in the middle of the park, wins the ball back, and then, it's just that consistency of what is and what isn't, I suppose, yeah, because It's just things have just gone against Leicester on both occasions. And yeah, I think I thought they were really good, Leicester, in this game. I thought they proved a lot of people wrong, and they were, especially in the second half, they really made it difficult for United. United obviously had some standout performers, but I agree with you. I thought Olivia Clark was brilliant in goal, and I think it's much needed because they've been missing Janina Leipzig, I think, quite badly, because her unbelievable performances have been getting them points over this season that they probably shouldn't have got. And they need a goalkeeper like that. I think it's interesting with these two teams. I think they're two of the teams that especially with United as well, Fallon, Taylor-Joyce, when you take her out that team, I just think they're so much weaker. They're so much weaker inside. And you could see that when Safin Middleton-Patel was in between the sticks earlier in the season. That's no disrespect to Middleton-Patel. She's a young player. But, the difference that Fallon Taylor-Joyce can make, I think it's on a similar level to what Janina Leipzig can make. So I think it's really encouraging for Leicester and Rick Passmore to see Olivia Clark come out and probably have her best performance in a Leicester shirt, I'd say. It's just that lack of clinical edge at the other end of the pitch that's the difficulty. But I could definitely see why you'd be frustrated from a Leicester perspective, because even though I don't think it was a penalty, I could see it's frustrating that both those key decisions go against them in this game.
Yeah, I think I would definitely be frustrated if I was a Leicester fan, because you can see that, if those two decisions go the other way, it could end up being 1-1 and a real big point for them as the season goes on. Manchester United probably were good value for this victory, though. They had double the shots on target, almost 4 times the XG and 7 times the expected goals on target, which showed that not only were they creating more chances and having more chances, but they were a lot more clinical with their chances and getting them on target. Laura, Man United have picked up 19 points on the road this season. That's 4 more than anyone else, and crucially 7 more than they've actually picked up at home this season, even though they've only played 1 extra game. Do you have any thoughts on why that might be, that their away form seems to be so good when their home form is a little bit more average?
I think potentially they're a very defensively solid unit when they sit to defend. And by what I mean by that is when they go away, they potentially sit kind of more defensively. You saw it when they came to Arsenal, and I mean they did it at home against Arsenal as well, but when they play those bigger sides, they're very good at setting up that unit to defend. Whether they feel they can go forward more when they're at home, because you're expected to dominate home matches, and that leaves them a little bit more exposed in that way. I think also you can maybe look at the scheduling, like who have they faced. I think they've still got to play Chelsea away, if I'm not mistaken. Their fixtures, that I think they have played Arsenal and City away, but obviously took that heavy defeat to City on the road, and then a really impressive 0-0 again defensive display against Arsenal. So I think we know that they can be a very solidly defensive unit, but whether they use that setup as much when they're perhaps at home is a potential reason there. And I mean, the other thing is that teams often sit in low blocks against the top 4 of the WSL, and whether United just have the answers to that more often when they're on the road, or whether teams don't do that as much against United, I'm not sure. But they clearly have a lot of attacking kind of elements that have very different answers and different kind of, in terms of if an opposition defence poses different questions, they have a lot of answers in that attack. And I think we've seen them kind of exploit that a lot this season. So, yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I don't quite have the answers as to definitely why, but I'd say they were definitely some of the things that I'd consider kind of looking at that.
Yeah. Let's move on to, well, I think to give Izzy a question, let's move her on to a game that we're all a bit more happy with for Arsenal fans on the pod today. Arsenal won, Manchester City 0. This one of the midday matches on Sunday. Olivia Smith finished off a counter-attack in the 17th minute, and that was the only difference between the two sides on the day. I do think City will feel a bit hard done by, though. Mariona seemed to foul Lauren Hemp as the last player, but the ref didn't give anything for it. Izzy, what was your view on that? Because I heard about it, but I hadn't seen it straight away. And by the time I saw a replay, and there was a few different people, I was at the Spurs game, there was a few different people saying different things about whether it should or shouldn't have been. And I think that was just a stonewall red for me.
Yeah, now the game's safely finished, done and dusted. Yeah, she should have been sent off for that. That was pretty bad. I mean, I can kind of see it, where the ref was on the pitch. Perhaps it didn't look as bad from the back. And obviously Hemp was, a danger in front of goal. So I think Mariner kind of had to do something. But yeah, in fairness to City fans, yeah, I'd be fuming at that, to be honest, because I think that could have been a real chance of them. But hey, none of my business what the refs want to do. Victory for Arsenal, and I think probably they deserved it as well. I think City didn't show enough kind of bite in this game. It felt slightly lackluster, and I think Arsenal really wanted it. You see that the way they were crowding out Bunny Shaw, who didn't have a look in, really. She was completely marked out of the game, and obviously Liv Smith making those runs in a sort of different position to what she usually plays. I think they probably deserve to win, but yeah, if I was a City fan, I'd probably feel a bit upset about that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the game going a bit more in Arsenal's favour, I think was probably fair. I was looking at some of the stats afterwards, and the possession was 51-49, so near enough the same. But when you're looking at the chances that were getting made off the back of the possession, that's where the difference is. So Arsenal had about 1.6 XG to 0.4 for Man City, so about 4 times as much, and 1.7 expected goals on target to just 0.07 for Manchester City, which I think shows that, getting 1.7 expected goals on target in a game means you're going to probably score 1 or 2. That's not anything to write home about necessarily, but keeping Manchester City to 0.07 expected goals on target is a real impressive feat. And I don't think there's many teams in the world that are capable of that. I think Arsenal are in a good defensive spell at the moment. They are I think they've kept a clean sheet in their last 3 games now, and there's no other team that's done that in the WSL, and it's not going to be sustainable. They're not going to, I doubt that anyway, they're not going to say they're not, but I doubt they're going to keep a clean sheet every game for the rest of the season. But they're in a good spell of form at the moment and can do that. Man City are a team that were in a good spell of form. They had 13 WSL wins in a row until they visited the Emirates. And now Arsenal are the team with the longest unbeaten streak in the league at 9. Tom, City will be 7 points clear, assuming Arsenal win their game in hand. Against Leicester. City will be 7 points clear, and they've still got to play 2 of the top 5. So if they were to lose both of those, that would then bring it down to just a 1 point gap between City and Arsenal, assuming Arsenal do end up winning more of their games as well. So can this result kind of rekindle some sort of title race, or are we just looking at the Champions League now and I'm just sort of trying too hard to manifest it?
There's a lot of assumptions in there, Sam. I think it's obviously a fantastic result for Arsenal, and to be 7 points behind at least puts the question mark there. I think, I would say it's still done. I don't think that, because, we're talking about those 2 teams in the top 5 that they're going to face are the same team that they beat 5-1 away from home and beat 3, and the other team they beat 3-0 at home. So, I think they'd be pretty confident going into those games, and they obviously don't have to face Chelsea again. So, yeah, I don't think we should be getting too ahead of ourselves, but I think it's a great result for Arsenal. And one of the reporters for the Halfway Line, Rose, spoke to Daphne van Domselaar after the game, and one of the things that she was saying was about how they wanted to prove that they were able to win against a team like City in the way that City are winning, and I think that is really important for mentality, because City have been so good this season, and I think something just wasn't really right with them in this game. I think partly Arsenal's tactics and just desire and gave them issues. Like, I think Beth Mead becoming an extra player in midfield is really working for Arsenal at the moment, and I don't think teams have worked out how to deal with it yet. Like, Chelsea had a really, really difficult time with it, and I think City did as well. That inversion into the centre midfield just creates another body that they're really struggling to deal with, and I thought that Manchester City had a really tough time with that. I think that they kind of struggled a little bit, Man City, to get anything going in terms of in terms of attack, and I think Arsenal did really well to target their high line, and also just surprising them with the fact that they started Olivia Smith up front. I don't think she started up front for Arsenal yet, and as much as I love Stina Blackstenius and as much as she's a fantastic player, Olivia Smith, though they both have that trait of lightning fast pace, Olivia Smith does give something a little bit different. She's more of a dribbler, and if she gets in behind, she's obviously shown that rounding the keeper, and it's just a different type of striker to deal with, as much as they still have pace to get in behind. So I think that worked really well to surprise Manchester City, but I don't think it's hugely anything to worry about for Man City. I think it's very helpful for them, no disrespect to Leicester, but to have Leicester at home next on Friday will probably be quite a nice little palate cleanser for them after a disappointing result. I think maybe they put quite a lot into that Chelsea game, not just energy wise, but it must have felt after they won that game, like even in the best of mentality, you'd probably feel a bit like we've beaten the champions 5-1, we've won the league now. So then to get yourself up for another game where you're fighting a team that's really hungry for it. And especially, I think maybe what was not really looked at or personified enough in the build-up is how good Arsenal are at the Emirates in the league under Renée Slegers. Like, they haven't lost under Renée Slegers. She's at the Emirates. She's in the league, of course. She's exceptionally good, and she, even though they've had a few disappointing draws, it's a very, very hard place to come and get a result and get a victory. And Man City found that out the hard way. But I do agree with what you said at the start, Sam, though I think it was a definite red card. But I think if they had given the red card, like Izzy said, I don't think they deserved it. And I think that was kind of what Andre Yeglitz was saying afterwards. It didn't feel like a manager who felt like his team were hard done by.
He seemed quite almost praising of Arsenal in the interviews that I saw of him after, saying that they basically came up against a really good team and Arsenal ended up beating them on the day. And yeah, I do like you saying that, no offense to Leicester, but here's something really offensive that you're nowhere near as good. But I'm not saying you're wrong. When I was sort of doing the notes for the preview show that we're doing later, I did find out that the last time Man City lost to Leicester in the league, I was just starting sixth form, and I'm now in my 30s. So that shows you how long ago it was. Laura, you were obviously at this game as well. Someone that made our team of the week this week, and I think she got the player of the match award for this game as well, was Kim Little. And she's obviously not a spring chicken anymore, but she's certainly still a quality player, isn't she?
Yeah, she's unreal. I think she's still one of the best players in the league. And that's not even kind of being a generous Arsenal fan. I truly believe, I think just watching her role in the build up to the goal was quite interesting in terms of, I think what Arsenal have done really well in this game and in the Chelsea game is break those high presses. I think when Arsenal struggle with the draws that we've seen this season, it's been against low blocks. But when we've seen these elite teams come out and press them really high, they've dealt with it so well and they've broken it down so well. And I think Mariano and Kim Little, and particularly Kim Little, is so pivotal to that ability, because she's just completely press resistance. I will absolutely never get tired of watching Kim Little turn around on the ball on a 5-pence piece. She just spins around it, shields the ball so well from defenders, and she's just always there, always asking for the ball and always looking for that turn to receive it in that kind of half space when you've got two defenders either side. She takes the touch so well, takes it into that space, and then exchanges. I think it's Mariana that actually receives in this instance, receives a quick 1-2 with Kim, because Kim's there in the perfect place as ever, and it sets Mariana off on that run, who then obviously works her own magic to deliver a really perfectly weighted pass for Liv Smith. And I just in that moment, I was like, I played in that position to a way lesser degree. But when you've kind of had someone be like, that's what you need to be doing, and I can't execute it at all, and you see these players kind of do this break the press in that way, and Kim Little does it so consistently every match. And I think to see also kind of where she's come from playing, like she's been used in that 10 almost in like a 9/10 role in the youth and when she was younger to adapt to that 6th position. And I think you can see so clearly when she was injured for Arsenal versus when she's in the team, and to be 35 and having that level of influence in this side is, yeah, so I can't be effusive enough about Kim Little.
With a massive grin on your face as well, which shows how Arsenal fans generally view Kim Little. And I think if you ask non-Arsenal fans as well, they might not necessarily say that Kim Little's the best player in the league, but I think most would put her sort of around the top 10 for all the reasons that you've just mentioned. Let's move on to one of the other games that was on at midday on Sunday. We're going to go to there was a few goal fests. We're going to go to West Ham 3, Brighton 2 first. Kika Seko breaking the deadlock in this one just before half-time with a lob over the West Ham goalkeeper from distance, a 0.02 XG shot that made its way in. Something a bit nerdy that you don't see very often, but on the stats on FOTMob, I was looking at this earlier, the shot is classed as a 40th minute shot, but the goal was in the 41st minute because she basically shot from that distance. It wasn't the most powerful shot. And if you didn't find that interesting, then this might not be the right podcast for you. Because that's the sort of stuff I'm going to come out with. Manuela Venegas made it 2-0 to the visitors just after the hour, but that was not the end of the story, because in the last 10 minutes, the Hammers hit back. Fionn Morgan, Shakira Martinez, and then finally Vivasei scoring to make it 3 for West Ham, 2 for Brighton. And yeah, not a good day for Brighton. With 10 minutes to go, if you're 2 goals up, I guess you might take your foot off the pedal a little bit, but maybe not as much as they did. I think the first goal was quite unfortunate from a Brighton point of view. Fionn Morgan I think it's quite clear she did not mean to shoot. But she, in doing that, she then kept Ndozi off guard. I think the second goal was a pretty poor mistake from Ndozi. If you're going to come charge out, you've got to clear the ball. Even if you end up clearing the player at the same time, at least get the ball out while you're doing it. And then the last one was just sheer grit and determination from Vivasei to make sure that she's the one that gets that ball and puts it in the goal. So, yeah, a good result for West Ham. It gets them up the table with a win. They weren't the team with the most possession in this game. It was 47-53. So, again, quite close with that. But they were the team that made the most of the possession they had. They had almost double the shots that Brighton did. They had about 7 times the XG, 3.5 XG to just 0.4 for Brighton. So not great in terms of West Ham's goalkeeping, but really good in terms of going forward, which I think is half of the story for them this season. They've obviously conceded the most goals in the league, but if they can win every game 3-2, they don't care how many goals. They don't care about conceding as long as they score more, heavy metal football as it's been called before. Izzy, West Ham have now got 2 wins in their last 3 games, which is obviously a lot better than they were doing before Christmas. So do you think Biccarino is getting a bit more out of this squad than Rhiannon Skinner was?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of it, to be honest, is down solely to the manager, just because I do think that the new signings have probably helped quite a lot. I think they're bringing a lot more out of the team themselves. If you look before Christmas, and maybe this is a conscious decision sort of by Biccarino, but before Christmas they were often playing like sort of a back 4 and then that sort of gory siren in the middle and then a kind of 3-1 up front. But with some of the new signings like Hansen coming in, sort of Hanshaw's able to like push up a bit more, and we know that she's really threatening on the ball, especially sort of heading in front of goal. So having her kind of higher up in the midfield, and then you obviously have people like Fionn Morgan and Vandela sort of on the wing. I think that's feeding more and more sort of into the box for that kind of front 3 of Martinez, Ueki and Asei, who are like in their own right phenomenal players. So I think perhaps it's like a kind of half and half of a sort of conscious decision, but also having more of those people at the back to just allow people who are playing a lot more defensive football before Christmas to sort of come forward a bit and just feed more into the box. Because I think that's what was missing before, right? Is that they just weren't getting on the end of anything, and it often felt like something was missing. So I think, it's starting to kind of shape up a lot more nicely and consistently. And I think if they kind of continue on sort of building around that, I think it could be once again a positive second half of the season for West Ham, as they're starting to make a name for themselves as a sort of a second half team. But yeah, no, to be honest, also there were, as you say, some poor defensive mistakes from Brighton, but I think just seeing that grit of them, literally like 3 goals in 9 minutes, was it? Like, that's a team that's really up for a win now, and yeah, maybe having a new manager's just kind of injected that bit more enthusiasm from them.
Yeah, it was really close. I can't remember if it's exactly 9 minutes, but I'll take your word for it, because I know it was something like that, where they just went for it at the end. And I don't think they've quite fixed the problem of not conceding that many goals. You know, they conceded 2 goals from 0.4 XG, but they've at least starting to fix the problem of not scoring enough goals. And I know that's something that's going to put a smile on on someone that probably wishes he was at the game, because he normally is, but unfortunately had to go watch the Arsenal game instead. But Tom, I bet this is going to be good news for you, if as someone that goes to a lot of West Ham games, if you're going to get 5-goal thrillers every time.
Absolutely. I mean, West Ham were excellent in this game. I thought they were really unlucky to be 2-0 down. And yeah, just a quick one on Katie Zellem as well, because I thought she was class for West Ham and just showed all of her maturity in that 90th minute when it's 2-2 and you could easily get overexcited, and she just picks out a brilliant ball for Martinez on the edge of the box, who sweeps it into the box, and then they've got another 3 points at home. So yeah, I think they deserved it.
She was so good that I think it was 2 seasons ago, the last one she had at Man United. She was so good. I think I put her in my team of the season at that point, and absolutely deservedly so. She was in my team of the week most weeks as well, because she just created so many chances from her passing, from her set pieces. And I think when she gets, I don't know how well she did at Angel, to be honest. I don't follow the NWSL that much. She obviously came to LCL and didn't really play. And then if she can start getting more game time at West Ham, and if they get the Katie Zellem that left Man United, they could have a real star on their hands. Yeah, go on, Tom.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important with Katrina Gorry going off to the Asia Cup that they have her, because I think to see her in this kind of form is just going to be music to the ears of Rita Gorino, with Gorry potentially being gone from the end of February until, if Australia achieve what they want, then probably until the end of March as well.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of almost luck with the timing of it, that there's not that many WSL games while the Asia Cup is on. So I think most people that are away are probably going to miss 2 games, which, you know, if it's like the Premier League season, it's obviously a much lower impact because there's 38 games. But when you've only got 22 at the moment, obviously we're going to have a few more next season, but when you've only got 22, those 2 games, and depending on who they're against, could be so important. Let's move on to Liverpool 4, Aston Villa 1. Mia Enderby opening the scoring in this game just 9 minutes in. Martha Thomas then doubling the lead 5 minutes later with what I can only describe as a very unique finish. If you haven't watched it, go and see it. It's great. I hope she scores more of them. Miri Taylor's strike got Villa back into it just before the break, but a late double from Grace Fisk and Silag meant that it was a 4-1 scoreline in the end for Liverpool. That's 4 away losses in a row now for Aston Villa in the league. Only West Ham have conceded more goals than Villa in the WSL this season as well. And in the sort of interview after the game, Talia Arroyo made a point of saying that she's hoping they can use this as a bit of a turning point for their season. Because, yeah, Laura, they're not in a good vein of form at the moment. They're 7 points off the bottom still, but they have still got to play Spurs, City, Chelsea and Arsenal. So do you think they might get sucked into a relegation battle if they're not careful?
I think a relegation battle would be hard at this point. When you look, I guess I can see West Ham and Liverpool both kind of catching up quite quickly with if they can turn their form around. I'm less certain about Leicester. I do really fear for them now, I think. But yeah, I think it is worrying for Aston Villa, because I think this is a game you kind of, obviously Liverpool are on an upwards trajectory at the moment and they good vibes all round. So I think that's hard when you're coming up against a team in form and you're not, and you're going away to try and turn around that form. But losing 4-1 is really worrying, and I think it's I think something we've seen from this Villa team at the start of the season was that back five felt like it was working, and it felt like it was pretty robust in some of the ways that they kind of set up. And they have, like, the players they have in their defence, you kind of expect them to be better than perhaps they've shown. But yeah, to lose 4-1 to Liverpool, I think is kind of really concerning, and we've not seen. I don't think they've addressed this problem of having a reliable goal scorer. You've got Kirsty Hansen, and then it's kind of looking beyond that is a real struggle. And I think maybe also they've been hit by injuries a little bit with Lucia Kendall, sorry, name just escaped me there, out at the moment. And obviously Lynn Wilms didn't start in this game either. So I think those two players have been really key in games where they've done well this season, and that's clearly kind of hit them. But you can't be so over reliant on those players to like not be losing. I think shipping 4 is really troubling. And I'm confused with their goalkeeper situation, because you just need consistency, I think, at this point. Just pick one, stick with it, give them a run of games, because we keep seeing this chopping and changing between Roebuck and D'Angelo, and neither of them are kind of finding form as a result. And I think at some point, you just got to plump for one and stick with it. Just got to plump for one and
Roebuck on, didn't they? About 5 minutes after half time. But I didn't watch the game. Was there any? Did anyone find out? Was there a reason? Was there an injury? Okay. That makes more sense, because I'll be honest, normally when a keeper gets subbed off, I assume it's an injury. But with Villa, I'm just not sure at the moment. I'm just not sure if it was just a warrior going, nah. Yeah, share it out.
Well, yeah, I think even beyond that, like they haven't kind of made their decisions always informed by injury. Obviously, imagine it will be Roebuck for the foreseeable if it is a longer term injury. But yeah, it feels weird, their whole goalkeeper situation. I don't think it ever works to kind of have this switching.
Even if you've got two really good keepers, you normally just need to pick one and go with it, because switching between them doesn't tend to work. I think City did that a little bit last season with Yamashita and Keating, and it didn't work out for them how they wanted it to, I think, sometimes. And this season they've given Yamashita a lot more minutes, and there's almost just sort of been a decision made. And while I don't think there's much between the two keepers, I think it's probably better for the team to just have the same one every week. Or pretty much every week anyway. It's hard because they've got two keepers that are probably on a similar level as well, a bit like Leicester used to have with Kopp and Leipzig and things like that. So, yeah, I guess they've just kind of got to navigate it, and maybe in the summer see if they can kind of do what Liverpool have done and upgrade on two quite similar level keepers, because Liverpool have obviously brought in Falcons. She's been fantastic so far, and they started the season pretty poorly, but they've had 8 points from their last 5 WSL games, and the only loss in that period was away at Man United. And Tom, obviously they've brought in a few players in this time, but Gareth Taylor's also had a bit more time to get used to the players that he already had, because obviously he's new this season as well. And he seems to be, from what I can see, playing a little bit more to the quality that he has rather than the quality that he wants to have, if that makes sense. He's not trying to make the players fit a system as much as he was at the start of the season. Feels more like he's getting the system to fit the players.
I think he deserves a huge amount of credit, because this was one of the games that raised huge alarm bells in pre-season for me, because they lost to Aston Villa 6-1 in pre-season. And then they obviously lost a little over a month ago 3-0 to Aston Villa as well. So to go and beat them 4-1 at home just really shows how much they've done to kind of turn things around. And yeah, I like the point you make about the new signings, because there's been so many good ones. But I think what's really strikes me about this performance is that the players that they already had really were their best players in this game for my money. I thought Grace Fisk is just such a captain. They missed her so much when she was out. She had 6 out of 6 duels won, which is just huge in a game like this. And then I thought the best player on the pitch was Kerry Holland. And she's been phenomenal of late. She had 3 successful crosses. That was as many successful crosses as every single other player from both sides had put together. She created 3 chances more than anyone else. Nobody won more duels than her in this match. Nobody made more passes into the final third. And of course, she got an assist as well in this game. So, And then you're looking at a player like Mia Enderby. And I've said this before, that I was scratching my head as to why she was starting for so long at the start of this season, because I just thought she wasn't performing. And Gareth Taylor obviously has a huge amount of faith in her, and he's reaping the benefits of that now. She scored, was it 4 goals in the league now, including 3 in their 2 victories at home. And yeah, their home is becoming a real fortress now. They lost their first 3 at home. They're now unbeaten in 5 at home. I think 8 points in the last 15 at home, which is really impressive. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be that Gareth Taylor will be really happy about. And obviously getting some players like Aurélie Chilag on the score sheet in this game is really big for them too. If they can get her up and going, then they'll have a number of on-form strikers, and suddenly you're looking a lot higher up the table than, they were bottom of the table at the start of this at 12 midday, and yeah, now they're really looking up rather than looking over their shoulder, I think.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, the forwards as well, because I think before Christmas it was basically they needed better Olsen on the pitch, otherwise none of the other players were able to score by the sound of it. And now they've got 4 forwards that can all put the ball in the back of the net, which is quite a big difference. And yeah, kudos to their window. I think other than maybe Spurs, you'd probably say that Liverpool might have had the best window, or maybe Man United. It's probably between those 3 that have had the best window, with the players they brought in, not just with how good the players are, but how much of an impact they will probably make on the squad, which, yeah, for Liverpool's sake is fantastic. Let's go to LCL. London City Lionesses lost 1-0 at home to Everton, also the final midday game. Scott Phelan in charge, obviously, with Brian Sorensen no longer at Everton. This is the first pod we've actually recorded since Brian Sorensen is no longer Everton manager, because we recorded the pod on last Monday, and then I think it was the next day that he got let go. So yeah, all of last week's pods didn't factor that in at all, but we can at least give a little bit of time to it now. Izzy, what do you think about the sacking? Because I don't think he was in a good spell, but I think it's almost a little bit like Rhiannon Skinner. I think she was a really good manager that was going through a bit of a bad patch, and it was a bit of a, do you stick with them and wait for them to get through it, or do you twist? And obviously Everton have decided to twist.
Yeah, maybe they were inspired by West Ham's story. I don't know. I think for me it was a little bit harsh. Obviously, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but well, firstly, he just won quite a big game when they sacked him, which felt like a bit of a slap in the face, but whatever. No, but like, he's been such a sort of big name in the WSL for so long, and I think one of the things sort of, and the reasons he's always been so sort of appreciated in WSL is how he's invested in those players. And, everyone could always hear him on the side of the pitch screaming, like, you could tell it was really sort of personal to him, I guess. And I think it was kind of evident in the fact that, like, someone like Gabaro came back and scored this weekend, who, was someone like that was a really important part of the team before she unfortunately got her ACL injury. And like, under a manager like Sorensen, I think those types of players really thrive. And I think I'm quite sad for him, to be honest. Like, yes, maybe they do need a bit of a change, but if I'd been in charge, I probably would have given him a little bit longer just to see things work out. I mean, it's not easy when you kind of change home to like the most iconic football stadium in the UK, and there's a lot of moving about, new players in and out of the team. So yeah, for me personally, I thought it was a bit harsh.
Oh, okay, I'll let you off. I was going to say maybe the top 10. But yeah, like you mentioned there, Emma Gabaro getting the only goal of the game, her first WSL goal since her ACL injury at the start of last season, which is obviously a really nice moment to see. In terms of some of the numbers from this game, this was probably the only one of the weekend where I really thought that it went against the run of play to an extent, because London City Lionesses had more than double the number of shots that Everton did in this game. They had a little bit more XG with that as well. But Everton actually had more expected goals on target, 1.4 to just 0.8 for London City Lionesses, which I think shows that they're getting more of their shots on target and they're getting better quality opportunities from doing that as well, which if you're 0.6 ahead of the other team, maybe you would expect to win the game by a single goal. Courtney Brosnan was the goalkeeper that prevented the most goals this weekend with 0.8, which I know it's not massive numbers, but there were some really big saves in there and really, really important saves at, I think, important times in the game. And it's really important when there's moments that various teams have different amounts of momentum in the game, that you make those saves and you make those important ones, because they're the real high pressure ones. So very well done to Courtney Brosnan in that as well. To give a little bit of an insight of how much pressure I think Everton were under, London City Lionesses made 14 clearances in this game, 1-4. Everton made 40, 4-0, so almost triple, which you don't normally see from a team that wins. So yeah, a really big result for Everton, not just because it's a win, but a win without a manager. It's pushing them up the table a little bit when they are at risk. And on, perhaps a completely unrelated note, Tom, I was just wondering who you think the best keeper in the bottom half is.
Drop the bottom half side of things. The best keeper in the whole division. It's Courtney Brosnan.
Go on, talk to me about Courtney Brosnan.
That's all I have to say about that. Okay, no, I do actually have a lot more. I mean, she's just fantastic. She's brilliant, and obviously, I'm being a bit tongue in cheek there, but I do think she is right up there with the very best in this division. She's just consistently putting on performance, and she's so important for them getting the result in this game. Like, the difference is the fact that she's been able to prevent that 0.8, and we saw that last week the game hinged on that for London City against Brighton. I just think at one stage, like, Freya Godfrey gets the ball and she cuts inside and she bends it into the top corner. Fantastic goal. The exact same thing happens in this game, and you can see the way that Courtney Brosnan's footwork is so good in terms of getting her in the right position to prepare for the shot going into the far corner, and her making that save, getting across to make that save. And I think that's one of the things that she's so good at, that intelligence and her positioning, so that she's already on her way to being in the right place when she needs to be. Just her reading of the game is really, really good. And she makes a couple of brilliant saves in this one. And I mean, she's just a fantastic goalkeeper. And I think often, because she's at a club like Everton, who aren't always who aren't up there, fighting for trophies or fighting for the top positions or European football, she can get forgotten about. But she's an exceptionally talented goalkeeper who's saved Everton more times than I can count this season.
She is one of the league's best for sure. I think when we're looking at the sort of the number of saves she makes and the goals prevented and things like that, she's always up there. And I do think Shamaka Ndozi is topping both of those metrics at the moment, with Janina Leipzig isn't far behind for saves, but Ndozi I don't think has been as good as Brosnan this season, because she's got those, a bit like we saw on Sunday, she's got those moments where she does make a mistake and she is going to let a goal in, whereas Brosnan doesn't seem to do that. She's very reliable. She might not make quite as many sort of world-class saves as Ndozi does, but the saves that she should make, she saves 100% of them. Ndozi's only going to save 90% of them, that kind of thing. Those were all the 12 o'clock games. The final game of the weekend, Sunday, 2:25 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Spurs 0, Chelsea 2. Before we get into this one, I will say that I did a Decoding the Match episode on this. So if you want to check that out, producer Felicity is going to put a little card up somewhere that you can go and click and watch that. You can come with me sort of behind the scenes as with all the media access and stuff at Spurs. So we get the sort of, you get to see what we get to see behind the scenes. I do analysis throughout the match and then speak to some of the players afterwards as well. It was a really good game to go to. I chose this one to do instead of the Arsenal game because I just thought the Arsenal game, Arsenal will give it a go, but City will probably win. Spoiler, but I did terribly in fantasy because I backed that result. I didn't have any Arsenal players. Whereas the Spurs-Chelsea game, I thought there was a lot riding on it and I didn't know which way it was going to go, so I thought that'd be perfect to do. They were only 1 point apart from each other, obviously both going for Champions League places as well this season, which wasn't something you could say last season. But Spurs started the stronger side, definitely. The first quarter of the game or so was all Spurs, but it was Kira Walsh that opened the scoring in the first half, a sort of second phase from a corner. Elisa Thompson made it 2 shortly after the break, and the game finished 2-0 to Chelsea. I think looking at some of the stats, you can tell how clinical Chelsea were, because both teams accumulated just under 2xG, but Spurs' expected goals on target was 0.5 compared to 2.1 for Chelsea. So again, like we've seen with other games, getting your shots on target actually makes such a difference to being able to score more goals. Spurs had some really good chances, but things like Olivia Holt hit the bar for one of them. She put the ball straight at Hannah Hampton for another when she had a really good chance, and they just didn't create enough of those opportunities to actually get their shots on target. This is, like I said beforehand, Laura, this was a game where 2 teams were going for the Champions League spots, and now Spurs have lost. They were a point behind Chelsea at the start of the day. Obviously, Man United and Arsenal won this weekend as well. Do you think Spurs are still in the race for the top 3, or is it sort of slipping out their fingertips now?
I think it'd be a really tough ask for them to do it now. I think it does feel like it's potentially just beyond their reach. I think those spots are so competitive. And with Chelsea, Arsenal and United all in the mix for them, Arsenal having played all the other top 3 sides, I think they've only got to play Spurs, and that'll be a home match for them, and we know their form at the Emirates. I think it is going to be kind of really tough for them to make up that ground, but that being said, I think if they finish top 5 this season, that is an incredible improvement on last season, and to have sustained the kind of charge to the end of January to be still considered in the competition for Champions League football is well beyond anything you kind of expect for them at the start of the season or anyone would have predicted. And they do still feel like a real challenge to any of those sides that they come up against. They're now billed as a tough game, and I think that's real credit to what Martin Ho has done with that side and the players they brought in, the system that they've set up and the way that they play against these teams, because it certainly wasn't kind of a pushover against Chelsea that we've potentially seen in the past. And I think that's so exciting that we're seeing more and more teams kind of hitting into that top 5. And I think we've seen this kind of rotation almost in the WSL of like your overachievers. And I think Tottenham have been in there before, but this feels like a project that's maybe got a bit more longevity about it. And that second season is always the real test for managers, as we've seen for Sonia von Pastor, as I'm sure we'll see for many other managers, and even Andre Jeglerts, when you kind of have that data about the system and know what you're up against. And I think Martin Ho will come up against that next season. That being said, it does really feel like they're building something that feels a lot more long-term than what we've perhaps seen in those teams that come and push into the top 5, and they've challenged those places a lot more robustly than we've seen as well. So yeah, super exciting for the league, and I don't think I think it's slightly out of their reach now, but I think it's really promising for kind of future seasons and their aspirations long term.
Yeah, I think Spurs are really building something at the moment, and I do think that they are not that far away from Champions League football. I think even if they don't qualify this season by finishing in top 3, I think in the next 2-3 seasons, I'd be surprised if they don't qualify at all. So yeah, I think if they keep going, especially with Martin Ho, making as much impact, and they're backing him with signings and things like that, they are going to go the distance. Not necessarily all the way to the Champions League and win it, but at least to get into it, which would be a huge step for Spurs. There is a little bit of breaking news as we're recording the pod. The head of women's football at Chelsea, Paul Green, has departed the club. We don't really have any further information on it at the moment. Izzy, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think firstly, he's really instrumental part of Chelsea women and obviously has been at the club for over 10 years. So it's quite huge in and amongst all the noise around Sonia and Sonia's contract renewal at a time when Chelsea are maybe not kind of where they want to be. But from what I'm seeing is this is quite a sudden departure and perhaps maybe quite a cold one as well. He wasn't in the announcement with the Sonia contract renewal, so yeah, while we don't know exactly what's happened, I guess there's clearly something going on behind the scenes at Chelsea. And yeah, I think probably just in the context of everything that's been spoken about and the discontent among the fans is quite an interesting development in the Chelsea saga. I like to think it was Madonna that just had words.
Oh, amazing if it was. I think it's really interesting. This has come straight after, well, not straight after, but not long after Bonpastor's new contract. It seems like a strange thing to do, to give a manager a contract and then get rid of your head of football straight away. But yeah, Tom, I guess all Chelsea really needed was a new contract for Sonia, and they're back into winning ways.
I know. Yeah, it was. That is really interesting news about Paul Green. I think. I mean, it presided over a generationally successful Chelsea side. Maybe there's something to be said about the fact that he was very much an Emma Hayes head of football as well. They worked very closely together for a long time. But, it's very hard to say at this stage. We don't really have much information. But yeah, just as far as Chelsea are concerned, first half, they looked second best for most of it. I completely agree with you, Sam. And then obviously they just played a lot better in the second half. Sometimes it's simple as just getting that goal and feeling a lot better about yourselves. I feel like Serkan Özkan was very good in this game. Johanna Rittenkannerud seemed to create a lot of issues as well. And then Alyssa Thompson is just, even throughout all of these kind of difficult moments, she hasn't her form, her level hasn't dropped, and that's a real positive for Chelsea. And yeah, I think, to be honest, it's just one of those games where they just needed to win, and it wasn't. I didn't think this game was drastically different to last year. This exact fixture. I remember me and Jacob covered this one for decoding the match, and I remember Tottenham being really good and then conceding, and then that was that really. So yeah, I think Tottenham have some ways to be getting used to that big stadium as well, because it seems to favour the bigger sides that obviously they play at the big stadium. Seems to favour those sides that come, because Chelsea have been playing at those big stadiums. Their last 3 games in the league, or 2 games in the league, have been at 2 of the biggest stadiums, most packed stadiums in the country. So I think that maybe played a part, but I think just really important for Chelsea to get 3 points and get back to winning ways. And I think certainly we'll be interested to see what happens now that Paul Green's departed.
Before we finish on this game, I wanted to highlight a little bit about Signe Garpset, because I didn't know as much about her as some others on the pod. And Izzy, I wanted to throw this over to you, because I know you were a really big fan of hers, and you were really sort of highlighting her as someone to look out for this season. But she's had 4 WSL starts now, no goal involvements, no goals, no assists. What do you think is going on there? Do you think that's just not something we need to expect from her, or do you think something's going to come?
I think that it's because I put her in my fantasy too, and now she doesn't want to return. Yeah, that's what I think. No, I think that perhaps maybe it's just like the system that Martin Ho's playing. I don't know a whole lot about sort of what kind of system that her previous clubs play, or even the national team, but maybe it's just a case that she's not necessarily just in the best place where she needs to be with Spurs. But obviously these like connections and things, they come with time, and there are other players right now like Olivia Holt who are kind of in that midfield role and really making a name for themselves. So it could just simply be a case that she just hasn't found those relationships on the pitch yet. But I do think it's a shame, and for the sake of football, but also for my fantasy team, I really hope she does kind of find her groove, because I think she's still definitely one to watch. We might just have to wait a bit longer than we initially thought.
Yes, just wait longer for her to get more used to the league. It is obviously quite a different league than where she's come from. So give her a, maybe give her half a season, and then by the time next season starts, she'll hit the ground running. Talking of aerial fantasy, let's move on to that, because that's all 6 games covered now. In the Decoding the WSL League, I'm going to go straight to the league. I'm not going to talk about ours, because as we spoke about before the pod, out of the 4 of us, one of us got 43, which was only 1 point more than the average. And that was the best score of the lot. So we're just going to skip over, because we haven't been experts this week. We don't need to talk about our teams. The number 1 player in the Decoding the WSL League is still Stanley with their team Villanova. 61 points this week, and still first in the world as well, which is super impressive. So yeah, that looks like it might be who's going to be winning the, either shirt or 2 tickets to a WSL game of their choice. The best score this week, though, was DL's team, which has carried RA, which I really liked. I haven't seen RA's name being used in any team yet, so yeah, really enjoyed that. They are 82nd at the moment in the Decoding the WSL League, but 67 points this game week was the best score of anyone. They captained Jess Park, as did I. A whopping 3 points, doubled to 6. But other quite high scorers in this team, there were 10 for Hampton, 8 for Caldente, Ueki and Sandberg, 7 for Haley, 6 for Letitia Seike, and 5 for Hansen. So quite a lot of players that are getting returns, which, yeah, maybe it's no wonder that they did so well and are getting carried away. And I think on that note, it's probably best that I shut up and I stop giving you stupid puns. I think I peaked at the start with material, which I don't even know how I managed to get that out.
You didn't even say it right.
Look, if Madonna would have come on the podcast and said it herself, maybe that would have been the way to get it. But I did actually see her yesterday.
Did you pick her at Decoding the Match? Where was your exclusive interview? On her fancy picks
at the end, I was in the mix zone, and I had like my phone on my tripod ready, like to hit record when the players came over, and Madonna walked through. So I was maybe 2 meters, 3 meters away, and I just didn't think to hit record. I could have just got her walking past or said something, and I sort of like I almost didn't clock until I'd already seen her for a couple of seconds, and I was like, why have I not done anything?
It's Madonna. How do you not clock?
No, not clock that I should have done something about it, and not should have just hit record. But never mind. It is what it is. I promise I'm telling the truth. Yeah, we'll leave it there for today, because we have just about hit an hour on the pod. Thank you all for coming along and indulging us today. And it's not just me talking again, because after just me on Decoding the Match and then me doing a whole podcast on myself, I think people would unsubscribe. So thank you very much, Laura. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Izzy. Of course, thank you, listener or viewer, for being with us as well. If you haven't already, go check out the Decoding the WSL YouTube page. That is where you get sort of the best content. Obviously, you can go and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, etc. But all the podcasts are video, and we do extra video episodes as well occasionally. So yeah, make sure that's the place to go. But thank you all for today. The next episode you'll get from us is a Know Your Stat episode, which will be out tomorrow. So keep an eye on your feeds for that, and we'll speak to you at the next one.